Today's amazing guest is Jessica Ko, who is the CEO and co-founder of Playbook.com, a visual cloud storage platform for designers. She was a designer for over 10 years at Google and Opendoor, is now working to make it easy for freelancers and designers to share their assets with the world. Jessica, welcome to the show. Super excited to have you here.
Thanks, Danielle. So
Oh my
nice
gosh.
to be here. So nice. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely, same here. I want to say that you have this amazing, very calm vibe. It's like the more I talk to you, I feel like I'm talking to a therapist. Like it's so calm and relaxing, as if like I can get all the answers from just talking to you.
Oh, well, thank you. That is like one of the best compliments actually I've gotten. That's
I'll,
fantastic.
I'll, I'm completely jumping guns on what we're supposed to talk about today, but
hmm
in one of our prior conversations, I told you that this analogy, and I'm going to use it now. I said to you that, hey, Jessica, I get a high when I connect people, when I make email intros to people, when I help people in their goals. I get a high, as if like if someone has watched like Narcos, it's like someone like snorting cocaine and getting high. Like I feel like that kind of like high in my body when I just connect people. And you said something along the lines of you should do things more that you get high of. You get that feeling, meaning that your body loves doing it.
hmm
That was one of the most dope advice, and it seems so simple, but I don't know. It was just so dope advice.
I mean, it's all biological, right? I mean, if you think about it, we're constantly chasing our highs. And we get highs from different places because we're just differently wired. Our brains are just so differently wired. So some people we have to do startups. We just cannot live because otherwise we just want to like, I don't know, just don't get that kind of high from anywhere else. So that's the only path for us to be happy. So then we end up choosing that path. And some people like yourself, like doing podcasts, talking to people, you get highest highs and you just keep doing that, right? Because I mean, you can't apologize for these things. There's no right path. There's no one path for everyone. It's just we're constantly chasing different highs, and I think that's the reason why this world works, because we're all doing different things. It's a good thing that we're not wired the same way.
True, because otherwise everyone is just gonna wanna become a startup founder or something. And I think your advice was so on point because there's also an element of listening to it. Just like I get a high from connecting people, talking to people, you get a high from running a startup,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But there's this whole thing about the media and how it glorifies being a startup entrepreneur. Sometimes the way it's like, oh, quit your 9 to 5 job, or like, oh, you shouldn't be working for someone else, work for yourself. And as a result, I feel a lot of folks who are happy just being designers or
hmm
just being employees and doing their jobs really awesome and they got a high from it, they somehow feel the pressure to such become founders because that's what is glorified.
yeah. That's what makes me really sad, actually. It's we're not meant to do the same thing. And really, it's not like being a founder is all great either. We do it because we kind of have to, because we're chasing that high. What makes us like like gets up in the morning and be excited about things. But it's not for everyone, especially if you're getting highs already from your job. What's the point? Right? Like, what if you don't get that same high from running a startup? And the chances are probably it's a 50-50 chance that you won't get that kind of high from running a startup. So
True.
I think it's very, very important to kind of you sort of have to sort of sit back and really have to think about what you want to do with your life. And that usually it's not, a lot of people like they hate their job thinking maybe being a founder is a way to like escape that. Some people use that
Yeah.
as actually running a business as escape from where they are, but that's just overcorrecting. It's just not necessarily mean that you'll end up happy like doing that. So, and then we make tons of overcorrections left and right, but it really takes about you sitting back for 6 months and evaluating your life. That's when you truly know what you want to do with your life. And sometimes it changes over time, because once you've run a company and say I got my high, but then maybe the second startup isn't giving me that kind of a high, that I wanted to get.
Yeah.
And then I end up switching to another job. So it's like it's constantly changes. But as long as like you sort of know where you're heading in the next 2-3 years, I feel like that's good enough already in this world that's just constantly changing.
So you've been a designer, you've been a design leader. Walk me through your journey. How did you know from that point that, hey, I think I'll get a high from starting Playbook? Like, how did that journey happen? How did you know that this is the thing from this is the thing I have to do it? I have to become a founder.
Yeah. It's not a simple, I mean, a lot of people ask me that question. It's like, how did you know? And when did you know? And what are some of the signs? And like you hear about these like founders, they were meant to be founders. From they were a child, they were already selling stuff.
I
Lemonade.
know, selling lemonade stands and all this. And
I was none of those things. I asked my mom, I was like, did I have any special childhood? Like my mom is like, no, you're just a normal kid. Like no special nothing. You're just a normal kid. So I don't have any childhood story that's anything special. It's so I'm turning basically 40 next month. So it took a really long time for me to get to where
if
I
I may
am.
say, you don't look 40, and I
Ah,
mean as a compliment.
thank you. So, I mean, it's like I graduated pretty, I think, like I also took like a year off and went to Japan. And I just kind of did stuff. As in, I worked there because I wanted to be in Japan. And all my 20s, I was just like, I didn't know what the hell I was supposed to do. I started out as an engineer, but I was a mediocre engineer, not a great one. I think I was actually pretty terrible at my job. Maybe that's why I moved away from it. And then I started doing front end development and I really loved it. CSS just made sense to me. And then every time you change something, it changes your web, like just the whole canvas. It made sense to me. And then because of that, because when you're become, when things make sense to you, you start kind of doing more of it. So I became quite good at it. So I got into Google because of that. And then I sort of turn myself into UX designer kind of like 2 or 3 years later after that. So it's like a slow transition of things because I didn't know. I even went to like PM school at night because I become a PM? Like I didn't know what the hell I was supposed to do. And then I became a UX designer. Everything sort of made sense to me. Um, you know, Luckily I had an engineering background, so I was kind of sharing the same language with engineers, and it was kind of a plus point for designers to do that. And then this was 2007, 8, 9. So, a lot of the sort of UX designers came from engineering backgrounds. So we all had this kind of shared language. And then I design. I actually, when I was UX designer at Google, I was like, I love this job so much. I would never leave Google. I remember telling that to my husband. I remember telling that to my parents. But this is what happens in life. You do it often enough. You do it for 2-3 years. You kind of stop learning it. You kind of get bored of it. You want to see what's out there. I think that's what humans are like. You're constantly
Yeah.
seeking. Again, the kind of same place that gave me a ton of high, it no longer gave me that kind of same high. Because I was so excited about absorbing like new skills, absorbing like what is this like new relationships that I have to build, engineers, marketers, and PMs, and then all of a sudden, now that I've done that for 4 or 5 years, I was no longer getting that same high. So I start chasing other things, and that's how I got into Opendoor startups. I knew that I wanted to be in a startups one day, and Opendoor just happened to be the kind of place that the product, the real estate, it's all everything, all the interests sort of like aligned. And I was super passionate about real estate at the time. And I got in, and that's when I got like the highest of high, which is I'm like looking over shoulders of David Barron's like sales and
Yeah.
operations, and Ryan Johnson's like operations, or the founders like the way that they run business, fundraise, and then there's marketers. We were doing direct mails, we're doing all kinds of stuff, and then as a designer, I got to see all of it because design is needed everywhere, every area. So it means that I was like, designing collateral for people, sales and marketing and product. I was building product, I was working with engineers. So I was constantly needed in every department, which meant that I got to see what the hell is going on in every single areas in the business, which gave me, again, I was getting the kind of highs that I wasn't getting before. And of course, that happened, and then I became the head of design at Opendoor, and the management. That's when starting to kind of make sense, and then that's when again it gave me that high. I mean, it sounds like I'm a total addict. I think I am actually. I'm like constantly
Chasing those highs. Oh my God. But you know what's so awesome about your journey is, I'll tell you, is you're constantly seeking different things and seeing where do you get that high, and you're not afraid to experiment. And when you openly said that, hey, I'm turning 40 soon, I felt calm in a way because like I'm 30 and I'm gonna turn 31 in Feb. And I feel sometimes like I'm old as hell in the sense that when I see all these Twitter posts about 18-year-old founders already starting a company, doing something, or someone already found the thing that they wanted to do so early in their life, and it makes me wonder, well, why could I not be the one to hit that high so early in my life rather than having to um, find different things? But now what you said makes sense to me that, hey, the high that you got like 10 years ago or 5 years ago is different from the high you get now. So it's always like constantly evolving is what I'm learning from your journey. And it's okay to explore different things.
Oh yeah. I mean, seriously, so many young designers come to me and they want to know. They want to know how to get to the field as quickly as possible. How do I become the head of design? How do I become the management? How do I become like a leader in design industry? They constantly ask me that, and then I always tell them like, why do you want to get there so fast? Because once you get there, it has an expiry date. Usually is about 3-4 years.
Oh,
Usually means
oh my
it's
God.
no longer it's no longer like giving, it's not going to give you highs, and then you end up having to like switch to different jobs or doing other things because like yeah, humans are, if you're anything like me, you're constantly chasing highs, then you end up it's no longer give you that kind of happiness it gives you.
But
So
don't you
what's the
wish that, what if like, don't you wish that you were a design founder that you are now, but maybe in your early 20s? So then you could have like wrapped that chapter up in your life much quicker. Or you're saying that at that point, you just did not have a high for that, or any desire to go that route.
I think that life has a timing of things. If I didn't become an engineer, I would have never become a UX designer. If I didn't become a UX designer, I would have never became understanding of what management leadership is until later. And then by that time, I was like, say, 30s, 30, mid 30s and late 30s, which meant I start to understand psychology of things. I understand why people do things the way they do. When you're starting at UX, you kind of just like, you have to do like research, you have to do interviews, you have to do prototyping, you have to do all these things. You do those things, but you don't understand why you do those things. And only when you're starting to get to this like 30s, you start to understand why you do those things. And I could answer every single thing as why there's process to things. I didn't know that in my 20s. Now that I know that, I can actually start to understand, talk to people about it. Like I can convince people why they did certain things or they don't, from a very deeply like fundamental, like from the fundamental place, not necessarily, because that's what you have to do. My answer is never like, that's what you need to do. I will tell you why that's needed. But I don't think I would have become startup founders. Truly, I mean, you're a manager, you're an operator, you are a designer, you're a product manager, you're an engineer, you're all those things. I think that probably the last 15 years or 18 years or something, I was just like getting ready to become who I am. And every
Wow.
single step was needed to get to who I am right now.
It's almost like a trade-off. Like in your 20s, yeah, you would have had maybe more energy than you have now, maybe. Um, but the maturity and the knowledge you have now, you have way more productivity, I would say now, being in the role that you are now. So maybe like comparison wise, the way I look at it is like if I could do something that I'm doing now, like me interviewing you now, like let's say I was doing this 10 years ago, I don't think I would have had the maturity or any of those things that I have now. Maybe I'd have more energy for sure. Like I could stay up longer, I could go without sleep, but I would probably, my productivity and my punctuality were not there at the level that I needed them to be. I might have just missed this interview. I don't know. But like
No, it's
now,
absolutely true. Yeah.
but now I
No.
think I have that maturity, which gives me the productivity. So even if I have less energy than I did like 10 years ago, I think I can get more stuff done now, I feel.
Oh, it's absolutely true. I think that my 20s, I like, you know, I fucked around a lot. As I say, like, I had so many interests, and I would start something, I would end it after like 6 months because it no longer interests me. I was truly like just really purely ADH driven, like passion driven, but not necessarily I was really thinking, like really understanding why I do things. That's why I kind of stop and go. Now I pick up something, I tend to go a lot longer. And I also manage my emotional like really well. So which means that I don't get burned out that easily. I'm much more resilient than before. I also know that when I pick up certain things and then when I feel down or I don't feel great some days, I know how to pick myself up. Like as in, I'm in control of my own self and emotions a lot better now that than I was 20s. And then the same as like you, the way that you ask all these questions, it comes from the experience, and which meant that you being a designer for that many years, you know exactly what to ask. You also know what your audience wants you to talk about. So all those things, I bet it's that was your 20s basically. That sort of made you.
I had a lot of fuck ups in my 20s, I can tell you that for sure. Oh my God. And I absolutely agree with you on that, that whatever I start now, I think I am able to continue it much more longer. Before it would just be like, I'll start something, forget about it, drop it. The consistency wasn't there. And now what I'm wondering is like, you're a designer, but now you're a design founder. What are like the benefits and downside of being, like a designer founder than let's say somebody from engineering becoming a founder?
Yeah. It's the funny thing is, I've heard a VC thing saying that, well, designers know how to market, but they don't know how to build a product. I think they're probably meant to say brand designers, or maybe product designers know how to build a product, but they can't build a business. You hear a lot of stuff like that. I actually think it applies to a lot of other fields as well. Salespeople, they know how to sell, but they don't know how to build a product. Marketers, they know how to market, but they don't know how to build a product. I mean, you can go on forever. VCs too. I've seen people leaving VC world and then became a startup founders, but they can't build a product again. The point is, I think that what these people are trying to say is that it takes a lot to build a business. Operations, marketing, sales, products, everything has to align perfectly. But we designers tend to sort of overvalue our skills and undervalue other skills that require running a business. So, and then I probably, one of those fuck ups that I did in my 20s, probably again, overvaluing my skills as a designer, and probably, it's probably that. And then now that I'm a little bit older, I understand that there's a reason why all these departments are needed. This is where I'm talking about. I understand why they're needed. And I can tell you, if somebody asks me that, I have answers for every single questions about why we need certain things. That's probably why, like, I mean, understanding that and then appreciating other skills is so much more important than actually whether or not you're a design founder, you're engineering founder, or this. If you're any of those things, you're just anything. And as long as you appreciate other skills and you appreciate people, other skills, just beyond your own skills, then I think you'll be a great founder.
But there must be some like insecurities you have. What I mean by that is like as a design founder, you probably don't have any insecurities in the design field because you've done it, you know how to do it. But could it be that you might have insecurities in some other domain, like marketing or some other field where you haven't worked a long time?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, I mean, a lot of insecurities usually come from you don't know what you don't know. I think that if
True.
I was at Google, I probably maybe there was like 3 days out of 7 years I was at Google, I interact with the marketer. Because we're
Oh,
so isolated. We're only work with PMs and engineers at the time. And the marketing had its own department, sales had its I didn't even know there was sales department. It's like because it's such a big company, you don't really understand like how where people are, what they do. I think that I would have been a horrible founder if I just left Google and then start a company then. Now that I've been to like Opendoor and then small startup and all these HR, I've seen HR, I've seen what recruiters do, I've seen all these things of why they need, why a business needs all these roles. I have a less insecurity now because I know what I don't know. I think it's because I've seen it slightly. So my
yeah.
insecurity is a little bit better than probably most young people starting out because young people again they haven't seen it. That's the problem. So
Yeah. And often the young people want to hire the best. Like, so if let's say a young founder starts a company and they're from engineering, right? I can see them hiring a good engineer as a head of design, head of engineering. But let's say they're trying to hire somebody in design or marketing, they want to hire the best head of marketing, the best of everything. Um, and it could be because of this insecurity, I think.
yeah, I mean, imagine if you were a 22-year-old that just graduated, and then VCs gave you a whole bunch of money, millions of dollars, and then say, Janiel, you need to hire head of engineering.
Oh my God.
That means you have to. Because
Okay,
I
okay.
mean, right?
Thank you.
I mean, like, what else? Like, you
I thought
can't
it was a
argue with
suggestion or
that.
something.
That means you can't argue because, again, you can't. You have nothing. You have no. You don't have any knowledge, enough knowledge to argue back
Yeah.
and say, why do I need the best what? You can't even like ask that question because at that point you haven't really built enough sort of knowledge to understand what is best engineering even means. Best head of
Yeah.
engineering. Do they scale? Like, do they help with scaling or do they help with the like development? What is it? So that's when the insecurity comes in. Like, I really don't know what I'm doing. So if somebody that supposedly seems to know that they've seen it all, tell you that you need this, then you need this. I, I I'm a little better spot now because I've seen something. I have seen some head of engineering. I have seen some head of marketers. Head of marketing, head of design. So it's a little bit. I can always ask a different question. I like why. Sometimes why is. Oh, sometimes what do we need? Or that's probably the next thing that you could try to answer. So yeah, I don't. I think I kind of feel. I mean, it's hard to be a young founder and somebody people are telling you, especially media as well. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
like on LinkedIn, you see like a bunch of startup founders. We hire the best, this head of this, head of that, and head of this, and you always wonder, like, why? It's is it what is it? And then they always tell you like VCs always tell you, oh, you got to build the best team. What does best team
Yeah.
mean? It's so abstract. A best team for one company maybe is completely different than to other things, right? Because like Opendoor is a very operation driven company, which meant
Yeah.
that it's completely different than like say a Figma building a product team, for example. So
And I feel like now you're in a point because of so much experience that you have, you can take all this advice that VCs or anyone is giving you with a grain of salt. Like, for example, now having done podcasting for more than 2 years, whenever someone gives me an advice or some articles there, like you got to do it this way, I take it with a grain of salt. Like, I'm like, listen, I'm not like a podcasting company with like 10 employees. I'm like, like one man show.
Yeah.
So you start to like take that advice with a grain of salt, like, well, it's not applicable to my level or my scale or something like that. So I'm thinking, like, even from your perspective, like when you get all this advice from VCs or anyone, like having seen what it looks like at Open Door and other companies, you're able to like filter it down and see, like, does it make sense? Is it just generic advice? Is it even applicable to me?
Yes, exactly. Those are probably, and sometimes they're good advice. They're excellent advice too, sometimes. Um, but I have to know that from within. It's not because somebody told me to do it, but I know why that's important advice to me. I can see why that person would recommend I need to hire this type of skills, people with this type of skill sets. Because I can see why what this person would do when they come into our, not this like abstract form of like, oh, this head of marketing comes and then, suddenly it's going to get so much better. It's not that. It's like, oh, I am so missing these skills and I'm not really enjoying doing these things in myself. So I would be so amazing if this person comes and then on day 0 will just like start doing it. But that is like a very like it comes from within. Um, and again, it comes from the experience within, because of the experience, because of all the stuff that I've seen in the past. And not to say that I'm like this. I don't take any. I don't take any advice from people. I love advice. I really do. I actually think it's, but it's the grain of salt thing. It's totally. I love hearing what I don't know, and then somebody giving me from different perspectives, and then I try to apply that to my business, and then where my needs are there. So it's almost like merging it, like where this kind of intersect is where like the really amazing stuff happens.
And absolutely. And I think there's something about being able to, like you said, like someone gives you advice, and if you have experience, that advice resonates with you. And I would rather be in that boat versus be in the place where I don't know anything and I'm just taking advice because I don't know any better. Right. So I think that, because like recently I was talking to a founder and they were having a hard time hiring a
Yeah.
designer, a lead designer. So I'm assuming, or I'm guessing, that you, of all people, definitely don't have a hard time hiring a designer on your team.
No, uh, it's the one good thing about being a design founder is you attract the likes. So, likes attract. I think that's what humans are. Just like when you see a leadership, for example, like has the same kind of background as you are, you have, or the kind of skill sets that you value, is more likely you want to work for that company. And that's it goes both ways. Sometimes I appreciate people that come from, possibly, I mean, it's unconscious, it's a very unconscious thing, trying to consciously kind of understand, why I'm attracted to certain backgrounds and not. It's all based on this, like, I find comfort in people, because like sometimes we have fear around like things that we don't know. So when you understand certain things, you're much more attracted to it. You're much more understanding. Just like VCs like to invest in places where they know the best
Ah,
sometimes,
yes.
because they understand. Like it's a comfort. It's a comfort thing. It's a stability and comfort, and we find a certain kind of level of comfort in places that we know. So that's why design founders tend to attract other designers. That's why recruiting designer is not very hard. For same thing goes for engineering founders. They tend to attract a really good engineering talent, um, because people want to work for that amazing engineering
Yeah.
sort of leadership.
But then speaking of comfort, like you are very comfortable in the design space, but as a founder CEO, you have so many departments to oversee, like marketing, engineering, sales. How do you make sure that you don't just spend time in your comfort zone? Like just spend all day on the design and talk to designers. How do you make sure that you're also spending enough amount of time in this other fields where you may not be as comfortable as you are in design?
I mean, the short answer is it's hard. It's really hard. it, it's almost like exercising, you know? It's like you're so used to doing like a certain exercise move, and your muscles have been so good at that, become gotten to the point where you
Yeah.
become so good at it, you want to keep doing it because it makes you feel good. And that's probably also that my work OCD have developed naturally. So it means I see pixels and it bothers me, you know? Yet the pixels don't actually make your company successful, or even bricks. Like nobody cares about pixels, yet only you care about those kind of details. And
Yeah.
and then we've developed those work OCDs over many years. Um, but to ignore that completely, it's incredibly hard. But it's almost like a conscious effort to ignore pixels,
It is
because
because if
when
if a recruiter on your team or someone sent you something that was visually misaligned or something, like like that's like there was a visual misalignment on the offer letter, and you're like, it doesn't even matter. Let's get the offer letter out and secure the candidate. But then a part of your brain could be like, oh, we got to get that alignment right. So it's hard, I guess.
right, exactly. So that is a conscious effort that you're making. It doesn't even matter. So why don't we just get this offer letter out? But I know, but when you go to sleep at night, it bothers you still. So that's
So
why
what
it's
do
a
you
conscious.
do?
You really have to ignore that voice in
Oh
your
my
head,
god.
because it really does not matter. So there's probably like 50% of pixels stuff, misalignment, I'm actively constantly trying to ignore, but it is incredibly hard. Um, that's probably me. The downside of being a design founder is myself is that the work OCDs that come with, from being a designer for so long, um, just, and then you become super hands on, especially when you're like on the days where you feel stressed. That's your
Yeah.
comfort zone. So you kind of get in and start fixing those pixels yourself.
Oh my god.
Because as soon as you do that, you're like, oh, that's just kind of your brain's happy.
But then there should be some benefit to being like a design founder, right? Because when people will give examples of the Airbnb founders or Apple, like, oh, their founders were very much focused on design. So that's why the company and the products are beautiful. So if a design founder has to consciously block away just like not fixing the pickles every time, because you're right, it's not always instrumental to success. But then wouldn't it not like reflect in like the beautiful products and services you're designing if you don't have to like block it away?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, because it's just like the likelihood of your product being more beautiful than others will be true anyway, because you're just naturally you're
I
towards,
see.
so you have to block that part a little bit so that other parts of the muscles in your business are growing. So it's not like you're over exercising one arm and then ignore the rest of your body. You kind of have to train, even though it will make you so uncomfortable for the first, like, 6 months of exercising other parts of your muscles. You have to do it, and not just you still do one arm exercise because it makes you happy. But you have to make a very conscious effort to actually grow all parts of your muscles and your bodies or your business muscles. That's
Oh
what I
my
meant.
gosh, it's almost like you're already at like an A plus level in the design field. So now you have to consciously be like, or let's say you're at an A level, you're like, there's no point in me becoming A plus in design more. I need to at least get to like a B plus in marketing, engineering, sales, like just so that I can talk to all these people that I'm hiring. I can make sure I make good hires. I can communicate them. I know what questions I need to ask them.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's like, yeah, until you get to a certain level, it's almost like all these amazing design candidates approach me and say, "Can I work for your companies?" Because again, the likes attract. You have to kind of ignore that, because if you, as soon as you hire one more amazing hire, your right arm is going to be huge, and the rest of
Yeah.
your, business muscles are going to die. Because, unless that is actually the strategic hire, you understand why you want to make that hire. It can't be, it's not because you're just comfortable making that hire and you appreciate that skills. You have to really look into the rest of the business to make sure it grows healthy at steady, at almost like the same pace as the others.
But how do you do that? Like, for example, if if it's a design field, I mean, you speak the language, you know exactly what to ask. Like, hey, what tools do you use? How do you organize your design system? There's all these questions that you know what to ask in a good hire. You know how to communicate with them. You know how to check the health of the design organization in your company because you've been there. But let's take any other field like engineering, marketing, sales. How do you level up as a founder? Like, hey, these are the questions I'm supposed to be asking. These are the things I should know about. These are the terms I should learn about. Like, what is that up leveling or skill? Like, what does the process look like for you?
Oh, that's a great question. Because I think about that all the time too. How do I level up as a founder?
Oh my god.
It makes me like think about in my 20s, did I ever ask my question about how do I level up as a designer? I guess we read books at the time, but it's really
Yeah.
just doing that makes us great designer, right? It's not so much of like
Yep.
us learning from books or going to conferences. I don't think I barely pay attention to conferences anyway. I looking
I don't
back,
even know if
it
you have the time. Like, I mean, like I know a
yeah.
lot of founders go to conferences. Like with your busy schedule, I don't even know if you have time. Like to be just going to like multiple conferences a month.
Yes, I can't imagine, especially when you read books, like usually I forget a lot of that stuff in like 2
Yeah,
months. So I have to
that is true.
keep like reading it multiple times. It's not like it's my brain does retain those kind of information that
It
long.
makes you feel good though in the moment. Like I read this book and I can spout wisdom from it.
Right. No, I can't. I really can't. I think I really, the only way I became anything decently okay designer is just doing. Like I spend that many hours designing. Some days I would there, especially when you're working on something you're passionate about, you tend to work through the night and just trying to solve that problem.
Yeah,
So it really just is exercise. You're just constantly like using their muscles to really level up that part. So as a founder, I truly believe that you just have to do, like, if you don't feel comfortable doing certain things, like for example, like a lot of people get very insecure about like sales and marketing, especially if you're a design
yeah.
founder. It's like people say, well, you must really not very good at sales and marketing because you're just a designer. I hear that a lot, also from when I became a founder. But really, just how do I learn sales and marketing? I just do. I go and talk to people. I go try to sell. I try to, I learn from one experience and I apply it to the next experience. You go fundraise. You don't hire like finance person to go fundraise for you. You do everything. So whenever you start to kind of anxiety builds up in your body, it's like I can't do it. I can't do it. I just try to block that anxiety and just go do.
Oh my god.
And
So you tried to sell your own product, which is how you got to like learn about the challenges that if you hired a head of sales, they would face the same challenges, right? When they're trying to sell Playbook. But sales is still like you can go and talk to people and do it. But let's take another example like engineering. Like as a founder, you're not going to suddenly start coding everything to learn about it, right? Because I mean, I do get like by doing you, that's the best way to learn. But you
yeah.
can't just suddenly start coding the entire database if you've never done it before and start learning a language on which your entire product depends on. So what happens in that case?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that I I mean, you don't know what you don't know until you actually try. I mean, that's for sure, right? So, engineering is highly technical. So, and it takes years to be a great engineer and to be able to do all those stuff. But there are certain things like you can learn, for example, and you have to try to learn these things. What, like for example, then you go out and meet all these engineers and they're gonna like bring up some technical issues with your product, like the way you're envisioning your product, they're gonna like raise up all these issues. Just like when somebody tells me like, oh, we're gonna build like a rental home website where people do all this. When designer hears that, we go through a like UI like immediately.
Yes,
Oh, in like within like a minute, we have gone through the flow probably. I know. Oh, I know.
100%.
Right? You need this, you need that, you need. How are you going to build this? Like, I don't know. I don't know. You probably need some internal tools that will help with that, but that would mean you need this UI. And immediately, because we have trained that muscle, that part of our brain so much that it doesn't take a lot for us to ask those questions, because that's the kind of how we
Yeah.
approach problems for the longest time. Engineers, they do same thing. They will ask very interesting questions. If you don't go and talk to them, you bring up that product vision. So then you pick up all these like constant data, you pick up all these like engineering data, and you ask, and you basically develop certain things, like sort of knowledge around the prior conversation with other engineers, and you take it to the next engineers, and then you do that, have conversation again. You keep level up that kind of content, and eventually you'll realize you're starting to understand how they think through that problem and what kind of engineering skills you need. And then if we did everything right in the engineering side, these are the kind of outcomes we will have. And it's possible, not possible. You can actually start to answer a lot of those questions, but not necessarily coding, because that would mean like, but you would know by then, you would know exactly what types of engineers you end up wanting to hire.
You're right. Like, I'm in a room where my noise is echoey. I think you can hear that maybe a little bit. Now, how, when this episode goes live, my
Yeah.
podcast producer makes that sound awesome. Like, I don't know what filter they're using. Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, if you ask me how that filter was designed, I don't know. I know enough that, hey, there needs to be some post processing work. That's how it's going to be done. But obviously, I don't know like at the depth level of how that operation is done. But I just know what the good outcome looks like.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what it is. But really, what sells podcasts is truly like the content. Yes, the quality is
Yes.
right. Content is important. So you start focusing on the things that matter the most. You yourself, as a founder, you focus on what's most important for business, and then you start, and then like the video quality and stuff. You get to a point where it's like good enough, and you start leveling up constantly as your podcast become more and more and more popular. It reaches a larger audience. So you almost like level up every part of your business, yet you retain what is the most important of that business. Just constantly, you yourself have to care about that the most, because that's what founders are supposed to do.
Yeah. And you're so right. Like starting this endeavor, I focus on so many things that did not matter. Like the biggest thing that most podcasters that start out now, the biggest thing they kind of over focus on is growth, distribution. And they compare to other podcasters who started in 2000s and have millions of followers and stuff. And it's just not the right metric to compare to. And they kind of like obsess about growing a Twitter following, not realizing that what really is going to make or break a podcast is the consistency. Like if you
Yes.
can't like keep a podcast going for like the content, like engaging content, good guests, and keep it going, consistency number one, and you get it going for like 3 4 5 years, then you can think about like I need to hire like some sales. I need to. They start focusing on day one about how do I make money from a podcast. It's extremely hard to make money from a podcast these days. Extremely hard.
Yeah.
Um, Unless you're one of the rare few ones who has a massive distribution and already famous or popular. So you're right. I focused on so many wrong things. I over engineered on the audio and thinking that, oh my God, this is like some some Netflix production house. Like, and I realized like it's okay. Like, I just like sneezed. It's okay. Like, I don't have to have the best mic and all these things. And there's so many like wrong metrics I um focus on that I shouldn't have, but I learned. But I learned
Ah,
the course corrected, just like you said.
yeah. I mean, imagine that like young founders have to face that. They like all these
Oh my
medias or
God.
VCs telling them like, you need to be perfect at this and this and this. How are you going to do the social media? How are you going to like increase their Twitter followers? Like it really matters, like those kind of stuff don't matter, but yet we tend to, it's where the like anxiety comes in. It's like you feel like you're not doing enough. But really what's important is that you have to know what your product, what you need to do with your product, and then you focus on that, and the rest of it is you either try to delegate as much as possible, and you level up slowly according to like your sort of like your business growth, but not necessarily like try to do perfect everything, because nobody can do everything perfectly. There's just no way.
It is. You're absolutely right. Like for me, it was like filtering out the noise, which was in my case, just growth and distribution and stuff. Because I was like,
Hmm.
if I just do this stuff right, it will come slowly. It'll just take time.
Yeah.
And for me, obviously, the goal is different. Like I'm trying to like build connections to the podcast. So trying to be the number one podcast on Apple Store is not necessarily my goal. Like, so obviously, like every product or startup will have a different goal. And what I'm thinking about now is because I love doing this so much, I can obviously spend so many hours on it. That
Yeah.
could affect some other areas of my life. Like, it could affect my day job. It could like I want to be there on weekends with my friends too. Like, there's something's going on in their life. I want to be there too. So as a founder, it's very easy, I guess, for you to just like spend days, nights, weekends obsessing about the company, every small thing, because you love it. But then how do you have that kind of balance where you're there for friends, family, and other things in your life too?
Yeah. I always wonder who gave people idea that you have to work through weekends and nights to run a successful startup. I like who told people that sometimes, like, is it totally necessary?
I think a large part is Gary Vee, and then the people call it the hustle porn. Like that's the word for it. It's just like you gotta. There's like posters like you gotta grind till it like that you like fall down or grind till it like bleeds, whatever. Like the motto, like you ain't hustling, bro. You ain't doing shit. And it's like this thing where you have to appear to be busy, right? Regardless of whether you're getting outcome or not, doesn't matter. You just gotta be like just like grinding, hustling, like yo, yo.
Yeah. I I think that it is probably part of my rebellious nature, is that I don't believe that you have to be hustling to be successful at your life or your business or startup. Yes, I do think about my startup all the time, but not necessarily I'm executing all the time, because usually the best ideas usually come when I'm on the plane to somewhere. I can't do anything. Like there's no internet. Say the
Yeah,
internet is down on the plane and I'm just sitting there, like, just sitting there, just staring at the ceiling or the window. That's usually like 10x ideas come about. You just have
yeah,
to kind of empty it out once in a while to get good ideas. But that means you have to be thinking about the problem first, leading up to that until you have a solution. But the execution part, and then it makes me wonder, is like all that Twitter following, like trying to increase the Twitter followers
yeah.
or Instagram followers, try to do this and this. Yes, then you will have to be really hustling. But in my mind, are those really that necessary? Like, so then
Yeah,
you,
because I mean, you could be a design founder and just post all this advice on Twitter every day, like just like, and yeah, you would probably get a lot of following. But yeah, I'm kind of thinking about it too. Like, what benefit is going to give you from actually then compared to doing the work and growing the company?
exactly. Sometimes we do a lot of stupid work because we have to be busy, and that makes us feel good about it. Sometimes we do it because of our anxiety, because when we're doing stuff and being productive, it
Yeah.
makes us feel good, and then not being super anxious about things. But is that really truly actually?
What you should be doing?
Yes.
Oh my god. I think you should start some kind of like founder therapy forum for designers or people just in general and help them really reevaluate a lot of things. I mean, I had to go through like my own set of like similar pathways to realize these things. And I'm kind of curious now, like for designers who are listening to this and they want to be like you, just want to be like, oh, I want to be a designer founder, right? I want to start my own company. I want to do a startup. What advice would you give them? Like, what things should they think about? What are some things that should be mindful of?
Yeah, I mean, I think we started the podcast with this. It was there's no right or wrong answer to anything in life. You know, it's it's really the bad shit happens when you're FOMOing. When you see other people doing
Yes.
stuff, when you hear about people making like crazy money on NFTs, you feel like you have to
I
get into
know.
it.
I'm one of them. Yes. Guilty of just like going to that FOMO.
It's really I can you imagine like I'm in a way like I'm lucky that I didn't live in this like crazy internet social media life. You know, my 20s were somewhat quiet. Yes, I had FOMOs,
Me too, a
but
little bit. Like I grew up in India, so I'm not on Insta or Snapchat for that matter. Because we didn't have a phone for the longest time. Like in India, like it was like a while
yeah.
before we got phones. So I grew up in that old school. Like I'm the odd one out when I'm hanging out with people in their 20s and they're like exchanging numbers and
Yeah.
they're like giving each and following each other on Insta. That's what they're doing. And they're like, bro, what's your Insta? And I'm like, can we just exchange like a phone numbers? And they look at me as if like, what century am I from? Like I really get that look.
It's you know it wasn't it nice. I wait, I'm a lot older, so when my FOMO was between me and my classmates, not like the
Yes,
entire world. The
I agree
entire
with you.
world or Forbes like 20 under 20, you know? Not I'm not comparing myself to those people, never in my life. So I feel incredibly sad for the people who are actually comparing themselves to other people that are happening on social media, you know, making millions of dollars on NFTs or doing some crazy things that they, you know, all those stuff, the offers they got. I just feel like it's, you know, FOMO is what kills you. Sadly, but
True.
it is hard to turn that off. So try, I mean, the only way you can like really just try to survive is to not try to avoid it as much as you can, is to turn things off, but that's I know that's really hard. Um yeah, but it's really there's no right or wrong answer. I say there's only like you only get to have one life, you know?
Yes.
Yeah. So just, you know, like I mean, really think of it as like where is my brain the happiest? Is it, you know, just in the current job right now where I have all my coworkers are my friends and we're having a great time all the time. I really enjoy coming to work. Then that is, you know, you get a high from that. So what is the point of trying to FOMO in
But
places?
there's money aspect as well. Like you could get a high. Like I mean, let's say you get a high from knitting. I mean, let's say I get a high from knitting, right? I'm just making things up, right? But that doesn't necessarily pay my bills. You see what I'm saying? Like the chances of me becoming the knitting expert in the world, right? I don't know, like or making like so much money from it is it's really rare. Like, don't get me wrong. Um, I would assume that I get paid more right now as a designer than I would if I just started to pursue knitting. So there's that balance too. Like you have designers who make really good money and are good at their job, but then they also want to become founders. Now, even if they get a high, let's say that the economics of that are also very difficult. Like the fact that they will get funded. Would they get a funding to continue that idea? Um, like maybe they have a family. I don't know. Like, so what about that income stability? So I don't know. Like, there's all these other things as well to consider. I mean,
Yeah, of course. I mean, I make basically 1/10 of what I would make if I were working at a corporate job right now.
as a design leader, yeah,
So it is a design founder. So founders don't make any money for the very longest time. The payoff is it can be large at the end, but it also can be nothing. So, but
oh,
the question is whether or not you still get high, even though you make like just like yourself, you're making podcasts, yet you get high even though you make no money.
yes, I don't make any money now.
That's a true honest answer to where you get your high. It's like even if you get nothing from it, I still enjoy doing it. I still learn a ton. My brain is so happy when I'm done this. That's when you know
But
truly
then,
like
But then I also have a stable day job that lets me do these things without having to worry about monetization from the podcast. So that's like just one caveat. So I wonder, in
Hmm.
your case, and you don't have to answer this, by the way, I'm just kind of curious, is the fact that you worked a lot before and you worked for, decent amount of years in corporate America, did it help that you had maybe some savings or something from that? Like you'd been around and you knew that, okay, I have savings or I can always go back to that you feel much more comfortable now that you make much less than you would if you were still working in the corporation?
Oh, that's a great question. So, I mean, right now, okay, when I left Google to join the startup that, basically it wasn't even called Opendoor at the time. It was just like, I think it was called Home Run. It's only like 6 people. Uh, there was, like I always had this mind because my parents were like, "What are you doing leaving Google job? What are you doing? Like to go to this startup that makes like you basically making 1/3 of what you were making before?" It's I always thought of it as like going to MBA. When you go to
Yeah.
MBA, you have to actually pay $200,000 for tuition. I'm going to MBA and
Yeah.
I'm getting paid. I'm getting paid to learn all those things about startups. So I'm like, oh, like how lucky am I to get paid while I'm learning all these startup operations? I think there's like some VC that said this, that something about either you should be uh, earning or you should be learning or something like that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you should quit your job. I think that I put a lot of emphasis on learning part. Even if I don't take home any money, I just want to like that's when my brain is happiest. I just want to learn everything about the world, everything. So that's if I feel like I'm like stop learning, I feel like that's when I start to become like what else can I do? What else can I do? And I always kind of tell myself, well, okay, I'm going to MBA, except I'm getting paid to do
Yeah.
it. So you can actually a lot of it is like self rationalization. You just kind of have to just tell yourself that you know your goal in the next 2-3 years to do this. You kind of time box it a little bit. Say, if I want to be a founder because I really want to learn what it's like to run a business. Um, so it's almost like I think of that as just going to like MBA. Then really, it's like you don't have to really worry about don't have to constantly worry about opportunity costs. You don't have to do all these things. You just do, and then eventually you'll go back and find a job again if all things failed.
Yeah. This is very similar. Like this podcast is my version of like not paying $200,000 and getting an MBA, but just like talking to amazing folks like you and getting that wisdom. Like that's literally what I'm doing here. On a Saturday afternoon, my buddies would be like, "What on earth are you doing on Saturday afternoon in this abandoned, well, not abandoned, but just empty co-working space?"
You're right. It's your brain is happiest when it does this, right?
100%. And then how can designers who are considering on kind of like the fence about whether they should become founders or not, or they want advice from you, how can they contact you or get in touch with you?
Oh, send me a message on LinkedIn. I usually am pretty good with LinkedIn messages. You can also email me. It's jessica@playbook.com. Yeah, those two are the best way to reach me. I check my email like
Awesome.
100 times a day. So
Gotcha. Thank you so much, Jessica, for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom.
yeah, this was fun. It really, truly was like really. This is probably this is my I don't know, second podcast, but yeah, this was fun. Really fun.
Thank you.